And I have been working on this as the addendum to Matthew 22. And it was the second or third question, I think it was the third question, when Jesus was asked which was the greatest commandment in Matthew 22. If you remember, there were four questions, three questions were asked of Jesus. The first question being the socio-political question, and that is, should we pay taxes? Jesus masterfully answered them when he said, whose image is on the coin? And he took sovereignty over the state, because even though Caesar's image was on the coin, and he said, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. Even though Caesar's image was on the coin, and it was right for them to return to Caesar what was his, Caesar is still in the image of God. So if Caesar is in the image of God and he is entitled to receive what's in his image, then Jesus very subtly took complete control and sovereignty over the government. The second question was a scoffing question on the resurrection, if you remember, where the Pharisees, no, the Sadducees asked him a ridiculous question. The scholars in the Jewish environment would call that question bara, which simply means a question that you already know the answer and you're trying to intimidate the teacher. And Jesus took power over death when he declared from their own scriptures that I am the God of Abraham, I am the God of Isaac and Jacob, and he was talking to Moses, and that was 500 years later. And 500 years later, he didn't say, I was the God of Abraham. 500 years later, he said, I am the God of Abraham, which is indicative immediately of resurrection, because he's not the God of the dead, but of the living. The third question was the question, which is the greatest commandment? And Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy soul, with all thy heart, and with all thy mind. And to love the second commandment, the second is as like unto the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. I want to address the second commandment, but from another perspective, and I don't have it all together yet, so I'll give you what I have, and I'll bring the rest of it in a part 2. So look for a part 2. It's in Matthew chapter 5. Beginning at 20, it goes like this. Whoever marked it, we got to go back. Matthew chapter 5. Verse 20 says, for I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time. Now Jesus is really needling them a little, of them of old time, because now he's talking about the law that was written by Moses. So, and they keep insisting that they follow Moses. Jesus said, them of old time. Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hell fire. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, don't go to shouting now. Leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way first. Be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift. I had little difficulties with the subject. I really don't think I have one yet, but I'll try. Purge yourself. Or maybe to be a little bit more accommodating to the sensitive, let it go. We'll figure it out. The commandment, of course, is for us simply to have good relations with people, especially brothers and sisters in Christ. And I hope to prove that having good relationships, especially with brothers and sisters in Christ, becomes and is not an easy thing to do. The first commandment seriously connects us to God. Love the Lord with all thy heart, with all thy soul, thy heart, and mind. And the second greatest commandment of all, in which the whole law is hanged, is like as unto the first, love thy brother as thyself. The first commandment then seriously connects us to God. So does the second commandment seriously connect us to people. My first commandment in my Sunday is to God. Bruner says it like this, and I love his quote. He said, it is appropriate, therefore, that after the Lord's Day, which is the day we exhibit the first commandment, the first day of the week, which is the Lord's Day, he says Monday should be devoted to repairing relationships with others. Sunday is the worship day, but Monday is the mercy day. After I've got finished shouting and elaborately and extraordinarily dancing in my worship and my praise for God on Sunday, the first day of the week, the first commandment being fulfilled. Then Monday, the second day of the week, now the second commandment needs to be fulfilled. I would ask you, after you get shouting, finish shouting on Sunday and worshiping God until you perspire and break your heels, what is going to be your behavior on Monday when you walk onto the job or you walk into the family room and have to deal with people? It's easy to declare how much I adore God. But the question is, after your adoration of God, how do you feel about people? Our first work in the world then, as a fruit of biblical piety, is the work of reconciliation with people. After I have come to God and I've reconciled myself to God, then I'm left to reconcile myself to people. I cannot be reconciled to God, having reconciled myself to me, and still have a lot of animosity and resentment in me for everybody who is around me, because they don't have the shape of my eyes or the color of my skin or the level of my finances. I cannot truly declare that I had a wonderful time with God, but I have a terrible time with people. I can hear a rat licking ice. Nothing dignifies the primacy of human relationships like the 6 antithesis commands that Jesus gives in his great Sermon on the Mount. And that's what this is. Because he regulates the way we live with other people. He's not talking about the heroics of the unusual circumstance. He's not asking me to jump in front of a bullet in front of somebody else and to express how much I love them, to swerve my car off the street and run into a tree to avoid a dog. He's not asking me to show any great heroics. What his heroics is to ask me as a usual Christian to deal with the people in the everyday situations that I find myself. How can I be such an elaborate worshiper and praiser of God and be so ugly when it comes to dealing with the people of God or any human being that God has created and placed in the world? If you notice verse 21 and 22, you will notice that what is called his first antithesis or antithesis, as this particular command is called an antithesis by other theologians. And I studied it, and I don't understand how they can come to that conclusion, because it's not really an antithesis at all. An antithesis means technically a counterthesis, a contradiction, or a rebuttal. It's anti, which means in normal discourse, in critical thinking and analysis, when you're having a discussion and you're seeking to come to a conclusion, you present a thesis. And if somebody doesn't agree, then they present a rebuttal or an antithesis. And then if you are congealing and congenial, then you both work it out until you come to a synthesis. I start with a thesis, we end up in a debate because you introduced an antithesis, but we work out the details and all of us come into a synthesis. Isn't that how you argue through with your husband? Yes. He makes a point and you make a counterpoint, but because both of you are seeking the proper end, you don't walk away with your counterpoint and he walks away with his point. You work through it together until you come to something that both of you can live with, and that's called a synthesis. Now, if this is a true antithesis, what Jesus is saying here, it would go like this. You have heard, thou shalt not kill. But I say to you, kill. Are you following me? If it's an antithesis, then when he said, the men of old said, thou shalt not kill, his antithetical position would be, but I say unto you, kill. But he didn't do that. What he did was he showed us what I would call an epithesis, because he intensifies or deepens the thesis. And notice what he says. To the thesis of not killing, Jesus adds the epithesis of not despising. He takes it deeper. What he's saying is, they said of old that you shouldn't kill. But I'm telling you that you shouldn't despise. It's one thing for you to kill. That's one level. But Jesus is going deeper. He's saying, I need to penetrate to the core of why you would even kill. And the only reason you would even kill is because you despise. He does not cancel the commandment. He actually fulfills the commandment. He filled it full of meaning. He deepens the commandment, and he clarifies its meaning to the very root. He is not dealing with the surface of an action that has already been done, but he's searching for the reason why you would even think of that action. And that is, you wouldn't think about killing anybody if you didn't despise or have resentment. For at the core of the commandment against killing is the divine displeasure with all human contempt for other human beings. God is not happy at all with anybody who looks at any human being he created and look at them with contempt or resentment. I feel like preaching now. I feel good about it. I don't care what walk of life. I don't care what their financial status is. I don't care what their nationality is. I don't care what their religious belief is. God is not happy with anybody who has contempt for other human beings. The real meaning then of this commandment is, do not nurse hate. Don't nurse hate like it's a little baby that's suckling on some milk. The root of killing is contempt. Might I just take you to Adam's time, and we can look at his children. God received Cain, and no, God received Abel because he had a respect to Abel, and so God then received his gift. Because Cain was a little bit envious and jealous and resentful of the fact that God received and showed favor to Abel and didn't show him the favor that he desired, he killed his brother. Now, he killed his brother out of a feeling that he had on the inside. And the feeling was one of resentment, one of nurturing, and one of nursing anger, to the point where he killed his brother, and his brother's blood cried out from the ground. I wonder what kind of cry is going up to God today with the amount of blood that we have spilled in contempt and resentment of other human beings. And for people to expostulate hate with such ease and call themselves the children of God causes me quite a problem. I'm having a problem not resenting those who resent everybody else. I wonder, do you feel where I'm going? I'm preaching this to myself, you see. You see, the commandment was not canceled. He wasn't canceling the commandment, but he was analyzing and psychologically seeking the very core of what is going on, why people are killing people. So at the soul of the commandment, Jesus adds two other reactions that spring from a disorderly or a contemptuous heart. And he adds two other reactions, and they're all word reactions. He adds the word idiot, and then he speaks of the word liar. And the first word is raka. Raka, you know, I gotta roll the R. And it simply means what it sounds like, stupid. And what it does is it questions the mental competence of the other person when you call them stupid. And you call them stupid not objectively, but you're calling them stupid subjectively because of the resentment or the disposition you have in your heart. And you question their mental competence insultingly because you have something in your heart that you are nursing against them. How many times have we used words as weapons in order to hurt somebody's feeling? Let me put it another way. You and I get in a discussion and we begin to talk about something, and I didn't know you had such resentment. I thought that I was just bringing up a point in order for us to get some clarity and in order for us to talk about it to see can we come to some conclusion. And in the middle of this course, you look at me and say, now just get out of my face with your bad breath. Now, my breath was the same when I was kissing you. But now that we're having a discussion, all of a sudden, my breath gets bad. It is not bad out of the fact that it is bad. It's bad out of the fact that you've got something in your heart and you want to hurt my feelings. What Jesus is saying is, I'm not taking you to the point where you commit murder before I say judgment. I'm taking you to the point where I have seen in you a resentment that if you get the opportunity, you would hurt that person who is in front of you. Let me go further. The second word is more, and it pierces even deeper and questions the moral competence of the other person. Now, I want you to see the trend in our world today, and I want you to see what's happening to all of us that's making our world so divisive and making us look at each other in different terms and in ugly ways. If you look at it, you will find that the first attack is to the mental capacity of the people who are supposed to be inferior. The first thing is they don't have the mind that's capable of handling things on the level that I am on. And then the second degradation is they have no morals. And so if I put you in the category of having no mental capacity, and then I turn around and say you have no morals because you're a rapist or you're a thief or you're a robber, then immediately I put myself in a position where I can treat you with no humane attitudes and dehumanize you because I've castigated you as mentally incompetent and morally without integrity. I hope you know where I'm going. It is this kind of resentment, this nursing of hatred, because the truth is that God does not create stupid people. And when you call somebody an idiot or stupid, you have just questioned the ability of the manufacturer to produce quality human beings. When you call somebody morally intrepid and you give the fact that they are morally incompetent, then you're just pushing people away so you can treat them any way you choose to treat them. But it's not coming because of them. It's coming because of condition that's in you. Jesus gives us 3 examples then of how we break the commandment against killing. The first is to stop grudge bearing. The second is to stop idiot calling. And the third is to stop liar calling. Whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause. Now that word anger comes from a Greek word which is origizomenos, and it's the first really of three terms. Anger is an orgy. That's what it is. That's or gay. It really, from our idiom, it would be orgy. And an orgy is a temporary madness. Anytime you understand orgy, you understand temporary madness. Now notice how close it is that our everyday speech of anger comes to orgy, and that is being mad. Here's how we say it. We don't say origizomenos. What we say is, I'm mad at you. I'm getting mad. I'm getting mad. That's how we define anger, as getting mad. You see how it comes close. Our idiom, our colloquial expression actually defines the word from the Greek. The grammatic construction used here, however, is more extensive than the usual translation angry. Origizomenos is actually in the present tense participle, and so it is literally is being angry, not just getting angry, but being angry and just bearing anger or carrying anger. Our idiom would suggest grudge, just grudge, and walking around with a grudge and malice all the time. So whenever we show up, it doesn't matter what the atmosphere is, it doesn't matter how pleasant it is, we infect it with this negative vibe that is just full of grudge. I'm trying to explain it because I don't experience it very much, so I'm trying to work through it. It's grudge. It's you come in and the person beside you might have on a beautiful dress or have a wonderful suit or some real good shoes or drive up in a wonderful car, but you can't enjoy anything that anybody else has because you constantly live in resentment. I'm trying to get the sort of physical attitude of resentment. It is not a standing up, free, release kind of a spirit. I'm trying to, the spirit that is free is a spirit that is accommodating and wonderful. But it's a Scrooge kind of a spirit. It's a always whispering about somebody. You can't come in and sit and enjoy the atmosphere or the ambiance of a lovely place. You spoil it with what's going on the inside, and somebody walks in and you just can't smile, and you have to whisper. You know who just came in? Just come in and they think they so much, and immediately the atmosphere gets dark. It was light, and immediately somebody feels something emit from you. They can't put their hand on it, but it's like you're nursing a grudge. You're holding on to malice, and you're poisoning your system. And what God is saying is that it's not just good enough for me to say, thou shalt not kill. I need to take it to the place where thou shalt not despise, where you don't nurse grudges, where you don't hold on to things that you need to let go. The present participle does not point a single moment of anger. What it does is it means to more than get angry. The word points to carrying anger. I'm just a portable carrying anger. If you open the back of my pickup truck, you will see anger. If you open the trunk of my car, it's anger. I'm just walking around angry about everything, angry about everyone. Another word there is resentment, and that is prolonged anger, anger carried around. Barclay says it like this, and he compares two words. He says the word orge itself represents more than temporary anger. He contrasts two main Greek words for anger. One is thumos, and the other is orge. Now, thumos is like the flame which comes from dried straw. You light the straw, it blows up, and then quickly it dies down. It's more like children, their kind of anger, where 1 minute they're mad, they just got angry, just flared up, and the next minute they're playing with each other. I wish a grown folk could be like that, where you blow off the top real quick and it's over. But the orge now is another kind of anger, because it's the kind of anger that stays and sees. It's the anger that it's inveterate. It's long-lived anger. It's the anger out of which you plan stuff and you connive with people and you get people in your corner and you poison them with the anger you have towards somebody. One writer says it's the anger of a man nurses his wrath to keep it warm. I'm just going to keep this warm. So no matter how I approach you and no matter how I try to make up to you, I don't want to make up. No matter how kind you try to be to me, I don't want you to be kind to me, because I got to keep petting this anger. I got to keep it warm. Revenge is a dish that's only served hot. I don't want to cool down. I don't want us to get along. Can I take it another way? Because we're going to break this yoke today. We're going to break it. We're going to break it. The anointing destroys the yoke. We're going to destroy this yoke. God wouldn't have brought the message if it wasn't here. You see, what Jesus is saying here is he has gone down to the very core of what's causing the problem, and he's going down to the core, and he's not, if you notice, he's not blaming it on anybody outside, because he says if you're at the altar and you're getting ready to praise God, give your gift, leave it there and go. If you know your brother has aught against you, go see about it before you come here. God said, I don't want to see that. I need you to come here with a pure heart, with a heart that I can receive. I can't receive a heart that's cluttered with a lot of killing in it, with a lot of resentment and anger. That's why you're praying mad. You just, Lord, in the name of Jesus, you're in a prayer meeting and somebody right down the seat beside you, you can't stand, and you're talking about, Lord, I need you to bless me, Lord. I need you to move in my family. And that person in your heart has got it blocked. Your anger got it blocked. Your resentment has it blocked. Your attitude has it blocked. The prayer can't. That's why you're praying so loud, Lord, because you're trying to shout over your resentment, shout over your anger, shout over your jealousy, shout over your envy, and you're screaming to God. If you had a pure heart, you could whisper to God, because he would be right in here. Lord, I just need you to bless me. And it would happen. It's critical to understand why and how this can evolve, how Jesus can look into it and see it like this. It's easy to see, and here's the reason why it's easy to see. He says in another passage, if you look upon a woman to lust, then you have already sinned in your heart. And what he's saying essentially is that when you look upon her to lust and you've decided in your heart that I want to have her sexually. Now, I don't have her sexually, but I have already decided. That means my desire, I can desire her and it not be lust, it not be sin. I can desire her. But when my desire and my will come together, then all I'm looking for now is opportunity. In other words, I desire her. Fine. Oh, she's fine as wine. Bye-bye. But then when, oh, she's fine. Man, I'd like to have that. Then now my will has just connected with my desire. And God said, you have sinned in your heart. Now, James puts it another way. He says that sin is conceived, and then sin grows, and then as it grows, it comes to the place of birth. So he uses the issue of birthing and the issue of conception to bring forth the point. You see, when a woman shows, that's not when she got pregnant. She got pregnant when she conceived. And in her conception, you and I don't know she's pregnant in the early conception because we don't have the scope to look deeply inside of where she is. But now when she starts showing, now we know she's pregnant. You see, what Jesus is saying is that a lot of folk have conceived to hurt you. They have conceived in their resentment of you. They have conceived in their anger of you, and they haven't shown it. I feel like preaching. That's why he cuts down through the outside action of killing, and he goes down into the action of resentment. He is saying, you don't see what they plan for you, but I see what they plan for you. So I am calling it worthy of hell fire. You don't have to kill him for me to judge you. God says all you got to do is despise him for me to judge you. You are guilty of hell fire because of how you feel about your brother. I feel like preaching in here. Isn't that the reason why? I just can't understand why anybody would say anything to relate to the hateful Nazis. Can I speak to you just for a minute? Let me go socio-political. When we talk about white supremacy and Nazis, the first thing you and I should understand that America should never be a place to endorse Nazis. And here's why. Nazis have killed more Americans than any other group in the world. Go to World War II. Who were we fighting in World War II? Who did we send our boys to die? And all of it is predicated upon hate. Can I tell you something about killing? It was in the first family, the very first family, and it was, I might say to you, the greatest killing of all. You talk about mass murder. Well, it was more mass murder than we have ever seen. Why? Because when Cain killed his brother Abel, he wiped out a quarter of the people who were living. Maybe I'm dyslexic. It was Adam, it was Eve, it was Cain, and it was Abel. When Cain killed Abel, that's 25% of the then population was wiped out. And if we keep on going the way we're going, with resentment for other people, hatred for folk who don't look like us, hatred for folk who don't have the right kind of skin, hatred for folk who don't speak our language, then we will set up all kinds of means to destroy who God created. I can't give a life, so I should never take take a life. I feel like preaching in here. Oh, I'm going to have a little church. I'm going to have a little church. I don't know what to tell you to do with high five, so I'll leave it alone till I can figure it out. It's a critical thing, you see, because Jesus is saying to us that your deeds show us that the attitudes we decide to carry are public acts. The attitude is not just an attitude of an inner matter, an emotion that is not a deed. Though if you're carrying around anger, it presupposes that you made a decision to carry it around. A decision then constitutes a deed, a decision for a way to live. I've just decided I want to live this way. I just want to be hateful. I just don't want to be bothered with people. Jesus shows us then that the attitudes we decide to carry are public acts. They are real deeds, and as such they are answerable before the judgment of God. Twice Jesus calls the angry person's victim his brother. How can he be my brother? Well, he's his brother. So now we understand first and mainly it applies actually to Christian brothers or sisters. The word has applied twice. The first meaning is the brother that you have been baptized with. The first test of Christians really is their relationship with other Christians. Why? Because you're with them all the time. The most difficult of all, another saint, by definition and baptism, a real brother or sister, whether we like it or not. I don't determine who my brothers and sisters are in the natural. When I woke up, I saw Patrick, and then here comes Grace, and then here comes Maxie, and then here comes Pamela, then here comes Janet, then here comes Randolph. I didn't have anything to do with it. I just had to live with them. I had to live with them. My mother and father determined who my brothers and sisters are. Now, in the same sense, I don't determine who sits in the pew, and I don't determine who my brothers and sisters are. I was with someone yesterday who said that they would like to come to church, and it was interesting because they were all over the news having done something that was a little whack, and all over the news everywhere. But the person said, I would like to come to church, but I'm scared. I said, scared? Scared of what? I'm scared of church people. Now, how in the world? This is the last place somebody ought to be scared to come. She's scared they would boo her if she comes to church. This is the last place anybody ought to be booed, or we'd be booing all the time. Boo. Here's the boo. Here's how this boo would go. Here's how this boo would go. If we booed folk in the church, here's how the boo would go. Boo. And I'd have to save one for myself, because this is the last place anybody ought to feel uncomfortable about their behavior. Because if anybody ought to have their arms wide open with no resentment, it ought to be in the house of God. I ought to be glad when you're blessed, and I ought to be sad when you're hurt. I ought to rejoice when you rejoice, and I ought to cry when you cry, because that's what being a child of God is all about. Give somebody a high five and say, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. I'm almost there, Pat. I feel something pushing me here. His brother is generally the victim, and whether we like it or not, we can't. whether we're happy or not with God's adoption policy. God chooses who he wants and sets them wherever he wants. And he expects us not to resent the person that he puts in the house with us. The reason we get angry with Christians so easily is because we expect the most from them. I'm praying with you. I'm holding your hand. I'm singing with you. I'm sitting in the house with you. How could you treat me like this when you and I are praising and worshiping the same God? We're reading the same Bible. We're talking and dancing together. We go out together as the children of God. We witness together. We touch people's lives together. How can you treat me like this? So it becomes difficult because you expect more out of your brother in the church than you expect from anybody else. I don't expect the church to contradict the blessings that God is about to flow in this house. I don't expect somebody to call downtown to destroy the restaurant that I put together. I don't expect people to talk about people who are trying to make our lives better. I don't expect people who are preachers and ministers in the house of God to be resentful of any person in this church. So it's hard when the people you expect the most from seem to be more evil than people who don't even come to church. But it gave me a better understanding of John when John said, "By this shall all men know." Jesus said it through John. By this, and that's John 13:35. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, because of your love one towards the other. He has taught me now that the greatest and most difficult love to perform is the love of your brother and sister in the church. And if you can master that, then all people will know, that even the people that are far will know that you have the power to love people that are with you all the time, the power to love people who disappoint you, because you have no resentment. My arms are open, black, white, yellow, red, pink. My arms are open because you are a child of God, created by God, and he said, "Thou shalt not kill, but more than that, thou shalt not despise." I feel like preaching in here. Give somebody a high five and say, "Love God, but cherish me." And then, of course, Jesus redefines neighbor, brother or sister. He says anyone can like the abstract person, but when this abstract gets filled up with a difficult person, whether in church or in the course of a day, things can get out of hand. When you drive around with resentment, if somebody swerves in front of you, the first thing, your hands get busy and your mouth gets busy. But when you're driving around with a spirit of prayer, because he said pray without ceasing, you don't feel like telling somebody off. When you're full of resentment and somebody calls the wrong number, "What are you calling this number for? Who are you?" And you hang it up as if you have never called a wrong number. But when you don't have any resentment and somebody calls the wrong number, you end up having a 5-minute conversation with somebody you didn't intend to talk to. It ain't no it's just not me. Give somebody a high five and say, "That's just not me. I don't have those kinds of resentment. I don't feel those burdens of hatred. I can move around freely because my oil is flowing. The oil of the Holy Spirit is flowing. I don't have that kind of stopped up, constipated anger that's got me all messed up, but I can flush that mess. I feel like preaching in here. Y'all excuse me if I'm a little crude, but I think that's the subject of the day. Give somebody a high five and say, flush that junk. Get it out of your system. Get it out of your system before your judge. I feel like giving God the glory in this house. The first visible fruit of inward resentment is the word of irritation or exasperation, you idiot. The next act of bottled up anger is the word that tells a person whom we dislike exactly what we think of him or her, liar or rat or some other nasty term. Some of us have called folk nasty things for so long that we're a master at the nasty. I've heard people cuss people out and it sounded like poetry. It sounded like it was rehearsed. It was just melodious. You could put music to it. The way they curse them out, because it's coming out of a spirit that's totally foul. That's totally a killing kind of spirit. And if they got an opportunity to waste you, they would. But I'm so glad God knows how to protect those that are his from those that are trying to hurt them and they try to put you down. I feel like preaching right now. I was a little boy. I said sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. That was the voice of immaturity, because I've grown up enough to know that words hurt. How many people are mentally scarred and psychologically debilitated over hateful words, words that throw our mental ability in question, or that consider us as morally vile, reach places in our nervous systems that even lasers cannot touch, because folk give cruel words out of their resentment. So the command goes beyond the law. Can I preach like I feel it? The law protects life, but Jesus took it to protect persons. It's one thing to protect life. It's another thing to protect the person. And God called me to protect the person. Give somebody a high five. Said, I've been through too much to hurt somebody else. I've been through too much to carry a lot of resentment, but I need to love you like I love myself. I want to love you like I love myself. If I want to be blessed, I want you to be blessed. If I want a bigger house, I want you to have a bigger house. If I want you happily married, if I want to be happily married, then I want you to be happily married. So I won't break up your home out of resentment. Can I preach like I feel it? If I want to go higher, then I want you to go higher. If I want to be healed, then I want you to be healed. If I want to have power, then I want you to have power, because I'm to love you like I love myself. If I want my children to make it, I want your children to make it. If I want your life, my life to be happy, I want your life to be happy. No resentment. I can hug you. I can walk with you. I can talk with you and feel nothing that's negative. You can fall and I'll pick you up. I won't put my foot on you. I won't stand on you. I won't feel glad when something bad happens to Hallelujah. I want you up. I want you well. Give somebody a high five. Say, flush it. Get rid of it. It ain't you. Don't belong in you. Keep letting folk pull you in their mess. Tell them you can keep your hatred to yourself, but I will not be infected by your negative. I got too much life